Hi team, and welcome back to another segment of Meet the Interpreter from Northern Virginia AHEC's monthly regular newsletter. This month we are featuring Emily Toll, and we want to thank her for being here with us today. And we also want to discuss this month's newsletter theme, which is called Changing Times, Changing Landscape, excuse me. As we know that the landscape in interpretation is changing. Over here at Northern Virginia AHEC, we are primarily highly specialized in medical interpretation, and we do some human services assignments as well. But every so often we get some other types of interpretations that are very unique, and Emily had a pretty recent one that we'd like to share. We'd like to share with the team. But first of all, let's get started getting to know our interpreter first. Emily, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Happy to. I was born in New York City, but grew up in Philadelphia, so I'm American, U.S. citizen, I should say. And I have had, I fell in love with the French language, I guess I should say. And in my teenage years, I spent 3 summers in France, which got me completely hooked, and went on to major in French literature as an undergraduate at Yale, where I also played the cello. I've also played the cello since I was 10, I guess. So I have these 2 themes in my life. And that, I must say that French has kind of been my guiding force throughout my career.
Your passion.
My passion, and it has really led me to all kinds of things I could never have predicted.
Wow. Wow.
So I started teaching French, but teaching English in Paris for a year and then teaching French at the secondary level here. But I ended up finding a position in the Luxembourg diplomatic offices in New York City, which coincidentally led to my working in a one-of-a-kind place where the New York City has a huge diplomatic community because of the United Nations and the consulates who are connected to the embassies here in Washington. And I had, as a young woman, the opportunity to be the liaison between the 88 consulates in New York City and the mayor's office. So we were a problem-solving agency, and it was quite an exceptional opportunity.
It's a very, very impressive history. Emily, do you interpret and translate for just French and English, or are there other languages that you do this?
I studied both Russian and Italian in my life. I have studied, but I would not, I feel that the complete and utter mastery is the way to go, so I would say no. French, I could probably translate from Italian, but French and English are the languages I work in.
And I'm sure after going through interpreter training, that was probably a mind opener. It's, oh my goodness, this is
Absolutely.
right.
The levels on which you need to be expert.
How often do you travel back to France?
I used to go frequently. I worked for 3.5 years in Paris following my time with the mayor's office in the organization. It's called the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And I worked in the protocol office first, and then I worked in a procurement office. Very different kinds of jobs. I have a family I met when I was 16. I consider my French family. And I used to go every few years. It has now been maybe 4 years. In this phase of my life, I'm raising a child, and so finances aren't quite, they don't flow as freely as they used to. So not as frequently. I hope to go back soon, but every few years. But I'm very much in touch with my other family. My French parents are still living, I'm happy to say. I have a godson. It's wonderful to feel. I do feel that I'm bicultural, even though I grew up here.
Yeah, that is very, very important. I'm sure a lot of our interpreters feel that way as well. And final question regarding this. How did you hear about Northern Virginia AHEC? How did you come about saying, oh, I want to join the AHEC team, go through their training? How did that come about?
I have always dreamed of being an interpreter. And it's only in the last couple of years that I have been trying very hard to find a place where I could take a proficiency test and then move on to actually work as an interpreter. it took a long time, and I think I found you through one of the job placement sites like Indeed.com or another one of them saying that you hire interpreters. And I remember contacting Fatima in October of last year,
Yeah.
and it just has taken a while, but I absolutely adored the training. In January.
Thank
It was
you,
great.
thank you.
It's very stimulating.
Well, Emily, then now let's go to the second portion of the segment, which actually relates to the changing landscape. And I heard you had a very unique session, interpreting session, with the French delegation recently. That sounds very interesting to me. At some point, even maybe even terrifying.
Yeah.
But how? Tell us a little bit about your assignment.
It was a great honor, great opportunity, and yes, indeed, I was very concerned, excited and concerned. It involved a French delegation accompanying the French president when he met President Obama not so long ago, in February, and the Minister of Veterans Affairs was interested to see in our Veterans Medical Center in Washington, D.C., how we handle, because the U.S. has had too much experience recently with artificial limbs and that kind of thing, to see how sort of the latest developments, and also to explore how the the Department of Veterans Affairs handles PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, for soldiers returning. And he also wanted to meet his counterpart. So it turned out to be a two-part meeting with a tour of the medical center and a meeting downtown in the central offices of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which overlooks the White House. Beautiful setting. And I guess you wanted to ask me how I prepared for it, or
Yeah, I did. I did want to mention that this was all covered by press. So, in terms of confidentiality, we are keeping that in mind, and this was covered by the press. So we are discussing things that we can discuss. Now, my question is, when you got the call from AHEC explaining about your assignment, what did you feel? How did you feel? What was your first reaction?
If I may tell you exactly how it happened, I was sitting in the office of the schedulers when the call came in, because Julia was helping me get into the database. And
Julia's one of our schedulers, by the way.
Thank you, at Julia Wills. And I understood almost immediately when I heard the words minister and secretary and VA Medical Center that this was something interesting. And when I got the assignment and received what's called a protocol read ahead, I felt a little apprehensive, as I thought that I would need to become an expert on prostheses and orthotics and all sorts of things related to orthopedics. And it happens that my French brother is what's called in French a kinésithérapeute, which is much more medical than our physiotherapists. And we set up a Skyping session in the one day I had between the Monday I learned and the Wednesday morning, and I asked him lots of questions, and it helped me feel more
So
confident.
you had some assistance prepping for
the vocabulary,
which is very important for us interpreters at times to ask beforehand information. Sometimes it is available, sometimes it isn't, and always to prep before. And how did you feel during the session? Like how did the session go? Did it start? Were you very nervous in the beginning and then felt a little better, or how was it?
The answer is yes to how you just described it. I also would like to say that I was able to sleep the night before, because I had learned on Tuesday, the day before, that there would be an interpreter hired by the French embassy to accompany the delegation and their press. So I thought, oh, this is a good thing. And she handled a good deal of the visit through the medical center. And that was actually interesting, because since it was simultaneous and there were several people, she would find it a little distracting when she heard me speaking. So the interesting part was that when we went to the meeting, an actual formal meeting at a conference table in the Secretary of Veterans Affairs office, by then we had talked to each other and agreed that she would interpret into French and I would interpret into English. And that meeting was a very successful, exciting. I was definitely on the edge of my seat, and I was seated to the left of the U.S. Secretary, and she was seated to the left of the French minister. And
You joined forces, and
we joined forces, and I
able-
felt that we were supporting each other and listening intently to the other. And we also had some time occasionally to, people did pause once in a while to let us interpret.
Excellent.
Not all the time, but often.
Well, we know you got you received glowing reviews.
Thank you.
By the way, so we thank you definitely for representing not just the AHEC organization and our training and our professionalism, but also representing the industry as well.
Thank you.
And
It
thank
was
you,
a great honor.
yeah, and thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
My pleasure.
We-
I'm very excited to be working with AHEC and look forward to all kinds of opportunities, and I'm glad to hear that things are branching out
Yeah.
in different ways.
We were actually recommended, this is not our typical type of sessions that we have, and we were recommended by the Virginia Hospital Center as one of the best organizations to do medical interpretations in the area, which is why we were called upon to help support them in this venture. So thank you, team, for tuning in this month, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to meeting you.